and welcome to this new episode of the Fairfax Sports Report. I'm your host, Monica Moore, and we have a great show for you tonight. We're going to be talking about every single fall sport that is still ongoing, and to help me do that, I'm delighted to be joined by some of the best sports writers from around the region. Paul from the Fairfax Times, Phil Murphy from Digital Sports, and BJ Kubarulis and Jason Mackey, both contributors to the Washington Post. But before we get to all of that, we want to thank the folks that help make this program possible. First of all, our good friends at CCI Screen Printing for all of your screen printing needs. Also, special thanks to Craig Sturbutzel for the great photos that you're going to see throughout this episode. Don't forget you can get copies of this program and all of the games we broadcast from throughout the region at www.pressboxvideo.com, and check out our website and its Video Vault feature. You can become a fan of the Fairfax Sports Network on our Facebook page, and please send us any comments, story ideas, news, or notes that you want to share. Well, first of all, let's begin with a couple of news and notes. I definitely wanted to mention that the Northern Region Cheerleading Final is going to be held this Saturday at 5 p.m. at Robinson Secondary School. That's going to be a great event. Also, congratulations to Trey Taylor, the Woodson High School football coach. He's been named the Redskins High School Coach of the Week. We talked about that award a couple of weeks ago when Coach Bendorf won it. Trey Taylor is the winner for the week of October 26th. The Woodson football program will receive a $1,000 donation from the NFL Youth Football Fund. Well, let's talk a little bit about the Concord District and show you what it looks like after Week 9. You see there Robinson at that 8-1 record, but it's Westfield that is perfect in the district. So let's talk a little bit about Westfield's game against Centreville this week. You see there Westfield getting the big win 24-7. And the thing that stands out to me about this is the defense for Westfield. We've seen the numbers that Cam Walter has put up week after week, and 147 passing yards is definitely a good evening for him, but the Westfield defense shut down the running game for Centreville, and Westfield guys is certainly, they righted that ship during the middle of the season right when district started happening, district play, and they just have not looked back.
Hey guys, Paul with the Fairfax County Times, Phil Murray with Digital Sports. Monica's right, Phil, Westfield's still rolling.
Yeah, this defense is outstanding, Paul. I mean, we knew this coming in. We saw their early season schedule, saw their struggles, saw their 1-4 start. And then something we were talking about before the program, these kids just play for Coach Verbanek. He just gets the most out of his kids, whether it's on baseball or football. They just get the job done. We're not going to waste any time. Let's go to these highlights. See Westfield against Centreville. First quarter, Brian Montague gets the handoff at the 29-yard line. And apparently, Paul, he's not a people person. 29-yard touchdown run and with 7:17 left in the first quarter. Westfield up 7-0, but Centreville coming right back. Warren Denny's open 24 hours. 6 catches, 63 yards, great hands there. Both those totals game highs. Just 3 plays later, Cam Walter from the 1. Paul Incubus says, if the line isn't going anywhere, if you look hard enough, you'll find a back door. And Cam Walter does. 1-yard touchdown run for him, knocks things up at 7 at the end of the first quarter. But second quarter, Westfield getting a drive together, going 11 plays, 59 yards, ended by this James Crossett 19-yard field goal with 14 ticks left, 10-7 at recess. Now, fast forward to the third quarter, Danny Fenyak ball at the 9. We have our fourth kind Cam here. Danny Fenyak on a 9-yard touchdown keeper. Apparently he's a dual threat quarterback. We just never knew. 17-7 after 1. But Centreville coming back. Mentioned the defense though. Monica, as she brought up, Vinny Caparosi. He's a junior and he reads at an 11th grade level. Reads the hitch, takes it 44 yards back to the Centreville 27-yard line. And just 5 plays later, the jersey sales for Danny Fenyak are going through the roof. Rolls weak side, hits Aiden Farrington, 9-yard touchdown toss. Fenyak 13-21 passing, $125. That score, Westfield up 24-7. That is your final. Paul, in this game, Centreville 32 rushes, 98 yards. They actually outgained Westfield in this game on the ground, but field position, timely turnovers, those were the story.
Yeah, you can't turn the ball over. Actually, I talked to Coach Verbanek after beating Chantilly 2 weeks ago, and he said he's been telling his team, telling reporters the same thing the entire year. He loves his team. He loves the players. He doesn't want anybody different. This is the team he wants. This is the team he likes to have, and it's the same team that he thought he had at the beginning of the year. Just took some time to get used to it. They did have that brutal out-of-district schedule. Things are coming together. They will be making the playoffs. Might have a home game. Things are looking up for the Bulldogs. But Monica, more Concord District. What's Chantilly up to?
Well, Chantilly has been having a pretty good season as well, certainly sitting around the third place spot in the Concord District. So Chantilly this week squaring off against Herndon, and once again the usual suspects coming up with big numbers for the Chargers. Mike Ferris with 94 rushing yards and didn't make the stat sheet, but Chris Martin also having another great game for the Chargers. But guys, the one I'm impressed with is Carson Romine. We came into the season, didn't know a lot about him. He's certainly showing that he can hold his own.
To go back to the Westfield game 2 weeks ago, that's where I noticed Carson Romine. That's where I noticed that he's playing just as good as Danny Fenwick is right now. I mean, he's a great quarterback, only a junior, I believe, right, Phil?
Paul, yeah, he's a solid quarterback. He struggled, though, early in the season. Didn't have a touchdown pass until the Hayfield game, and then since then, this passing game's just erupted. And this running game, 342 yards in this game. So if you get a solid passing game to complement that effort on the ground, you're going to be successful. Remember, yes, they're 5-4, but their 4 losses are to all teams ranked in the top 5 in Division 6, currently sitting in power points. And in every one of those games, they led in the second half, and only once they lose by more than 7 points. So they're right up there in terms of quality of play with the top teams in the region. Now, Herndon, I think I knew coming into this game, Chargers were going to be able to move the ball on the ground. Last week, the Hornets gave up scoring drives at Loudoun Valley of 99, 89, and 93 yards. So you mix that kind of running offense against a running defense that struggled. Yes, Herndon had Zach Osick back. Definitely saw a difference on the offense. But, Paul, that Chantilly running game is just too much. Zach
Osick has had those 2 interceptions as well. I mentioned turnovers. It's going to hurt, obviously. Herndon kind of a team that we kind of an in vogue team at the beginning of the year, thinking something's going to happen. They're going the opposite way of the Bulldogs. But 2 games in the Concord, Monica, 1 more left.
That's right. The Verizon Fios game of the week this week was Oakton squaring off against Robinson, and the big thing for Oakton going into this game was whether or not they could stop Robinson's running game, and it was just too much for the Cougars to handle. Jimmy Boone started off the game with a great touchdown that some might have thought could have set the tone for Oakton, but Robinson responded so well, and in the first half it was Connor Riley coming up with 3 touchdowns. He finished the game with over 120 rushing yards. Then during the second half, it was his counterpart, Jared Velasquez. He had 2 touchdowns of his own, 123 rushing yards. Those 2 running backs have been sensational all year long, and they're a big reason why Robinson's record is what it stands at now. And speaking of Robinson, BJ Kubarulis was able to catch up with 2 of the Robinson standouts, Brian Lighty and Jared Velasquez, in the Players Lounge.
Hello, everybody, and welcome into the Players Lounge. I'm BJ Kubarulis. Joining me here in studio are 2 players from the Robinson Rams at 8-1 this season and near the top of the Virginia AAA PowerPoint ratings. There on the far side of your screen is Brian Lighty, one of the best linebackers in the Washington metropolitan region, also heading to Virginia Tech. We're going to talk with Brian about that decision and more. Also joining me here to my immediate left is Jared Velasquez, a junior running back, 6 foot, 185 pounds, finding the gaps, doing a great job for Mark Bendorf's Rams. Jared, let's start with you. This is a season that has been kind of difficult to track in the northern region, a lot of upsets, a lot of teams beating other teams, more so than in other years. It's been kind of hard to track the region. Coming in, what kind of program did you think or team this year did you think Robinson had, and in your role filling some pretty big shoes, did you feel a little pressure coming in to kind of perform?
I mean, just not feeling pressure, just coming out and just playing my games, play my ball high, just play hard. And just last year I just kind of having just a lot of underclassmen starting and stuff, kind of knew that this year would kind of be the year to bring Robinson back.
Yeah, and Jared has certainly helped do that. Over 1,000 yards rushing already this season on 144 carries, 13 touchdowns. He's averaging over 117 yards a game, 7.39 yards a carry. That's pretty good in the northern region, playing in the Concord District against some very difficult defenses. Jared is a defender last year, still plays a little defense, but it's really filled some offensive shoes. So speaking of defense, that immediately takes us to Brian Lighty. I feel like you've been playing at Robinson forever. This is your senior year. You have been with the program for quite some time. Tell me a little bit about what makes this Robinson team different than the ones in the years past.
Well, probably the team chemistry. You know, we all just came together as a team, knew what we needed to do. And the year before, when we didn't make the playoffs, we went 5-5, and we all gathered at school in the recital hall and said, you know what, this is the end of it. We got to come back and start firing on some other teams, and we did. And we worked hard in the off season, and working hard together every day in practice.
Yeah, Brian's doing a great job. Had a lot of tackles against Oakton, and Oakton is a team that that you haven't had much success against in your high school career with Robinson. Tell me a little bit about what it was like to beat Oakton 35-17 this week. That had to be a little sweet, especially after missing the playoffs last year. That was a team that in your district has made it hard for you in the last couple of years.
Oh yeah, in the last 3 years, I mean, they just came out with the W every time, and we just kept that in our minds when we practiced, and we came out fine. We didn't care how well our record was. We just wanted to go out and beat them.
Jared had a big game in that game, 116 yards, 2 touchdowns. You guys are now ranked second in the Northern Region Division VI PowerPoint ratings. I know that you guys don't specifically track that stuff because if you did, Coach Mark Bendorf would be very upset with you. He likes you guys to focus on each game, one game at a time. With that said, reflect a little bit on the Oakton game, and then I want to ask you about the next game coming up.
I mean, I don't remember a lot. I was just kind of a haze there, but I just know that we came out with the W. I mean, just coming out and we just all came fired up. Even past years, last year I know it was a heartbreaker too. Last year, that halftime thing, but we just got our stuff together.
Very nice. Jared had a big game, 2 touchdowns, and so now headed into that Centreville game. Walk me through your expectations. How do you finish a season strong when you know you're already in the playoffs? You guys have clinched a home field advantage for the first round. How do you finish the season against a 3 or 4 win Centreville team? It's an easy trap game, don't you think?
Yeah, no, it's just all week we just got to be focused. I mean, we've been focused all week about just Centreville, just nothing about the playoffs yet, just Centreville. Just worry about them. Just come out and just be bad for us to just come out and lose against them. Just come and win.
Yeah, so I want to talk to you a little bit about recruiting in Virginia Tech. You committed super early. Walk me through that decision, and you were a big prospect from, seems like your freshman year. I know Coach Mark Bendorf was very high on you from the very beginning, and that's a program that's had a lot of success in the last couple of years. So to mention you in the same breath as some of the other players he did meant that you obviously have a lot of talent, and I know a lot of recruiters were coming at you. Tell me a little bit about why commit so early to Virginia Tech.
Well, after my sophomore year, I had a lot of coaches coming in and talking to me, tell me like what I need to do, like my SATs and all this. And I just didn't feel like putting up with the pressure before my senior year of football because I'm already trying to focus on this more than ever. Because this is probably the most important moment in my life, one of them.
Wow.
And just come out here and not worry about it. All right, I'm already committed to Virginia Tech, and just come out and play high school football.
And you have a chance to accomplish something very special. You come from a family that's had some success on the football field. Your older brother, David, I remember covering him, and also played some lacrosse pretty well. Also a former Fairfax sports report. He's been on with us in the studio as well. So 2 lighties, not bad. Both guys making it on set. All right, walk me through the end of the season. How do you finish strong, and how do you continue to make a playoff push with a team that's already accomplished so much?
Well, we just all came together. I knew this team had chemistry, and I knew we could do it from day one, of the off season. So we just worked through the off season, and once we hit the first game of the regular season, we knew what we needed to do, and we came out a little slow the first half, but the second half we got in check, and we knew like how everything needed to be from that point.
All right, let's do something real quick in the last 2 minutes of this program. I want you to scout Brian. I'm going to ask Brian to do the same for you, being that you guys play opposite sides of the football. How do you try to break a hole against a guy that's doing a great job as a linebacker and could probably put a hurting on you, man? What happens when you see this guy on the other side of the ball? How do you try to beat him?
I mean, I know a couple of times in practice he's hit me pretty hard, and it's like, well, there's Brian.
Yeah, right.
But I mean, I don't really know. I mean, I guess outrun him. I mean, it's hard. It's hard to get by.
Okay. Scout Jared for me. I mean, what kind of back is he, and how do you try to stop a guy like Jared?
He's just really elusive, and when I come out and try to make the tackle, he's just putting on the jukes and puts on his jets, and he's a very explosive back. And I knew that since the start of his sophomore year. he came out firing, and I knew this kid was going to be good.
All right, the Robinson Rams joining me in studio here today. I'm BJ Kubarulis, and I want to thank Jared Velasquez. I also want to thank Brian Lighty, and I want to wish the Robinson Rams the best of luck in what seems to be a big playoff push. They could certainly make some noise at 8-1, ranked second in the Virginia AAA Northern Region PowerPoints. This has been another look inside the Players Lounge. Until next week, I'm BJ Kubarulis.
Okay, so Robinson having a fantastic senior night, getting the win. We're going to take a quick break from football now and talk a little bit about volleyball since we didn't get to talk about it last week. The district lists are out, so let's talk a little bit first of all about who were the players and coaches of the year for each of the districts. In the Concord district, no surprise there, both Susie Murak and Jill Pearson from Robinson getting those honors. But I definitely should mention that 3 players from Chantilly making it onto the first team all district lists. Again, no one was surprised about that. Allison Williams having a great year, Samantha Reeves and Laura Misowitz from Chantilly all getting first team all Concord district honors. Now in the national district, no surprise as well that Elise Bush was the player of the year. Sharon Ponton from Stuart getting coach of the year, well deserved. But let's talk a little bit about Elise Bush because on senior night she tore her ACL. She's out for the rest of the season. So Yorktown's still in the hunt for the National District Championship, but missing Elise Bush, that's a huge loss for them. But their sophomore, Ashley Rock, has been having a great season. She was also honored with first team all National District honors. Well, switching gears, let's talk a little bit about the other 2 districts, starting with the Patriot District. South County sweeping the top honors there with both Lindsay Stevens and Dave Prawl getting the top recognition. And South County had 3 players on first team all district, as did Woodson. Woodson had a phenomenal year as well in their new district. And then want to talk a little bit about the Liberty District because first of all, I cannot say enough good things about Elise Richardson. She has really been the heart and soul of Langley's team this year. And then Jill Racciatore for Stonebridge getting Coach of the Year honors. And her Stonebridge Bulldogs had 4 players get first team all district. No surprise that Amanda Miller was recognized, as well as Lindsay Gill and Christine Beckham. And then their freshman, Ryan Ackerman, got first team all district honors. Ackerman's going to be around for a very long time for that Stonebridge Bulldog Club, so that was great recognition for her. And as I mentioned, we're already into district tournament play, but at least want to mention the number 1 seeds. They're all still alive right now. Chantilly for the Concord district, Yorktown for the national district. They're squaring off against Washington Lee tonight in the semifinals. South County, and then Stonebridge. And Stonebridge is a team that I really think could make it all the way to the region final. I'm so impressed with them this year, and so definitely a team that I have my eyes on. We'll have all the news from the district tournament finals for you next week, as well as a preview of the Northern Region final. Okay, well, let's jump back into football and talk a little bit about the Patriot District. W.T. Woodson still coming on very strong. We talked about Trey Taylor getting that impressive recognition earlier in the show, and then Lake Braddock also still looking very impressive. But let's talk a little bit about this W.T. Woodson win because they just continue to be the offensive juggernaut. James Johnson, 2 weeks ago, we talked about the fact that he had 4 touchdowns, 1 touchdown in each quarter. This week, only 1 touchdown. But what was so impressive to me, guys, is that 6 different players scored for Woodson. So talk about some offensive balance.
That goes back to who we think is the best quarterback in this region, Connor Riley. 2 pass TDs. The general on the field is going to get everybody involved, and he did that.
Yeah, and things you forget. You see a quarterback, all you want to look for is passing touchdowns versus interceptions. Also, that option they run out of the spread, no one runs that better than he does. He really gets the most out of his own athleticism and that of the players taking perfect angles, following his blockers, hitting guys in stride. I mean, it's near flawless. They run that play inside the 20. It's basically a touchdown every time. You have James Johnson. His only carry of the second half was a 74-yard touchdown. So Trey Taylor pulls him on the bench, puts out sophomore Jonathan Stokes. He gets 7 carries, 71 yards for a touchdown in the second half. And that's against an Annandale team that's really not that bad. Annandale beat South County on the road 7-6. So this defense, can get it done. But Woodson just keeps putting up points. And everything's saying that Woodson is deserving of that #1 seed. That loss to Lee may have just been a fluke.
Yeah, and they are #1 in our poll as well, and they deserve it. Let's move on. Monica, T.C. Williams in South County.
Well, this is one of the games that we picked last week, and every single one of us got this one wrong because it was T.C. Williams coming up with the big win, 17-10. We talked about the fact that Joe Hargrove is back from that injury. This was his second regular season game in action, 99 passing yards, 2 interceptions there, and then Robert Carter with the 76 rushing yards. So Aaron Andrews having a big night, guys, but T.C. Williams just having a very impressive night. And once again, I talked about it for Westfield, but the T.C. Williams defense looked really strong.
Yeah, a lot of interceptions so far this week. Looking at the stats, a big day for defensive backs. But Phil, TC gets a big win.
Yeah, and we've talked about their defense before. You've seen them on the top play of the week when they had the 2 interception returns for touchdowns against Annandale. They picked off Michael Niebuhr 3 times, and here 3 interceptions in this game against Aaron Andrews and Jesse Beal Evan Beal combining, Jesse's little younger brother. But yeah, we check out the highlights in this game. It was actually South County striking first. In the shotgun, Aaron Andrews gets the snap, and I hear a party. 6-yard touchdown run for Andrews going through a pile, putting South County up 7-0 in the first quarter. But we fast forward to the second quarter now, as we usually do, and South County, they love this Z-hitch, but not when Damian Benton's popping the ball free, and especially not when old Kendrick Barnes is recovering it for the Titans at the 35-yard line. And then here, Joe Hargrove going the other way. You can run fast, but I can knock you over. 7-7 at the break. Second half, more South County driving, again in TC territory, and more Titan defense. This time it's Israel Richardson, the safety, coming up with a big pick. Returns at 40 yards, but Paul, like Israel, he's not making it back to the promised land. He would get tackled at the South County 27-yard line, but it's all good because just 3 plays later, this offense getting in gear. When you give him that kind of field position, things are going to happen. You see Joe Hargrove in the shotgun, 297 yards passing this week, held to 99 this week, but he's getting some help from, hot Bobby. Robert Carter, 27-yard touchdown run. It's 14-7 as I struggle to swallow. Fast forward to the fourth quarter. Score currently 17-10, after the teams traded field goals. TC putting it on ice as Darnell Roy gets an interception at midfield. TC able to run out the clock and get another big win for them. Remember, this team beat Oakton. They were only 1 point from beating West Springfield. Yes, Coach Fields does a great job with the South County defense, and they've showed up big recently, especially against Lee last week, but the TC defense in this game just too much to overcome.
I'm going to get a quick breath there, Phil. We'll jump right into Robert E. Lee and West Springfield. The Lancers getting a 30-27 victory over West Springfield. Jasmine Williams, 136 rush yards and a touchdown, 57 receiving yards and a touchdown, and quarterback Greg Lopez, 139 passing yards, interception, 121 rushing yards and a TD. Matt Prokop for West Springfield, 178 passing yards, TD and an interception. Dan Collins, 48 rush yards, 2 touchdowns. Phil, Ari Lee getting another good win.
First off, Paul, I'd like to compliment your reading comprehension. Very good there.
Thank you.
Lee, West Springfield, this game came down to what happened when Lee had the ball. We knew Drizzy Augustus, if he played, he wasn't going to be 100%. He was only out there for a couple snaps, had no carries in this game. So I think what West Springfield was doing, what Lee was doing was keeping West Springfield on a leash to see how this game would play out. They did get a big lead in this game, realized they don't need Augustus, save him for the playoffs. But we pick things up in this game in the first quarter. It's West Springfield striking first. As you see, Dan Collins, 9-yard touchdown run. He finished 12 carries, 48 yards, 2 trips to the house. But Lee coming back, same quarter. Greg Lopez, his agility in the pocket is outstanding. Throws it right at the line of scrimmage there, 25 yards to Jasmine Williams. So your score after 1, 7 up. Fast forward to the second quarter, more Greg Lopez. G-Lo getting it done, finds Mequan Johnson on the 6. Little Jennifer Lopez reference there. Mequan Johnson, 24-yard touchdown, 14-7 in the second quarter. More Lee. Now watch Greg Lopez's though. His elbow seemed to be down before he got to the goal line in this run. There's only first and goal, second and goal from the half-inch line. Let's not lose ourselves from that. 21-7 Lee. It would be 21-10 Lee after John McConnell field goal at the half. But Paul, if I told you that Lee would rush in this game for 343 yards, is that something you might be interested in?
Yes.
Okay, well, they had 6 rushing first downs on the first drive of the second half. They only allowed 4 rushing first downs the entire game. Jasmine Williams, 3-yard touchdown run. He finished 15 carries, $136, and that score. But West Springfield, trailing 27-10, gets back in with some fortune on a high snap. And when this thing happens, safety first. Pitch it out of the back of the end zone. 27-12. And West Springfield coming again. Prokop, 176 passing yards. Finds Mike Kim there, 26 yards. Gets it in the 5. You in my 5. Dan Collins gets a second rushing touchdown. But Sly, I'm going to tell you, this is a big point for Lee. I usually don't put kickers in here, especially when it's not a game-deciding kick. But 39-yard field goal, that's a great sign for them. They've been struggling on extra points all year. That made it 30-19. TJ O'Connell finishing things off. Kid's a first-team all-region receiver. He's getting down with his bad self. 6 receptions, 88 yards. That 6-yard score cut it to 30-27. But Lee runs out the clock. Jasmine Williams. This run was called back by an upfield block in the back. Check on the left side of your screen. Probably a good call. Still, Williams 136 yards, Lopez 121. They combined for 35 carries. Running game won it for Lee, and that's without Idris Augustus. He's expected to play this weekend.
That is the Patriot District. Phil, congratulations. Nice job. Monica,
I need a sip of water.
What else do you have for us?
All right, so let's move on now into the Liberty District and show you what happened during Week 9 with the Liberty District. Stonebridge there still leading the district with their 5-1 record, and then you see lots of different teams there with 4-2 records. South Lakes this week getting the loss against Langley. Madison and Fairfax all at 4-2, but let's talk a little bit about Stonebridge's big win, because certainly Stonebridge, we've talked a lot about them this season, but we want to talk about them a little bit more. Defeating McLean, and the player of the game was clearly Marcus Harris, setting a school record for number of carries in a season. He had 33 of them against McLean. You see their 200 rushing yards, and then Kyle Gavea also having a big night. Riley Byro tries to answer for the Highlanders. We talked about him a lot last week, getting that preferred walk-on status or offer from Virginia Tech, but just not enough, and guys, Stonebridge coming up with the win.
Stonebridge, have had some close games in the last couple of weeks. Nice to get a refreshing, easy win. But McLean now, they have to win next week to get into the playoffs. Stonebridge already in. Yeah,
and you say refreshing win, not that an easy win, not that it was against a bad team. It was just comfortable in the margin. And they rode Marcus Harris again to get there. This team, in the 19th carry of this game, he broke Stonebridge's single-season record for carries in a season. That was held by Grant Harris, so not really too much refacing there of whatever record books they have. You only have to delete the first name. It was held by Grant Harris. Marcus Harris, 33 carries, 200 yards. 4th time this season he's cracked 200 yards in a game. But for the first time this year, Stonebridge allowed 100 rushing yards to an individual player, and that was Riley Byro. Went for 147, probably his first game back to what we would call full health this late in the season. And that's maybe something Stonebridge needs to watch out for. Madison moved the ball well against them on the ground. They ran that power sweep to the weak side, basically at will against them, especially in the 4th quarter of that game. And they get a South Lakes team. We'll talk these upcoming games soon, but they get a South Lakes team coming up that we know can move the ball on the ground and have very capable running backs. That if they get to the second level, it's trouble with Darius Smith and Jawan Jones.
Well, South Lakes, I don't know what's going on with them right now. Losing to a Langley team that's had some struggles this year. Langley beating South Lakes 24-21. Phil, you got some highlights for us.
I do, but before I get to those highlights, I just want to touch on, I think what the thing is with Langley, I think they've just been this good all year. We're too dumb to realize. You figure the first 3 games, they faced Lake Braddock, Chantilly, and Madison, 2 teams that we think will win 1, maybe 2 games in the playoffs once those start next week. So they had a tough schedule to start out. They go beat Herndon on the road, and then they take Fairfax to overtime. So I think this team, sitting at 4-5, is basically where they should be. Their schedule was very front-loaded with difficult teams. Now we can get to those highlights of this game. First quarter, we jump in second quarter, 3-0 because we can. And here's Darius Smith, 8-yard touchdown run for South Lakes, putting them up 7-3. But ensuing kickoff, Ken Harvey, this is his son Marcus. Ken Harvey, pro linebacker, he's a big man. We like keeping big men happy because they can hurt us. So everyone's happy. Marcus Harvey, 89-yard touchdown run. We're all happy. Kickoff return for a score for Harvey. Makes it 10-7 to Langley. Obviously, I'm just kidding about that. That would be your score at the break. Fast forward now to the 3rd quarter, and Darius Smith again on the pitch goes 44 yards. You can put up your hands and wave goodbye. Smith on the day, 19 carries. Buck 32 on the ground. Those 2 scores. Your score 14-10. But Langley coming back in the first 3 quarters of the game. Braden Anderson, 10 of 14 passing. That's great efficiency, including 6 of 7 in the first quarter. This is the 3rd quarter. That 67-yard completion to Joey Kippy does not hurt matters, but Sean Price chops him down at the 1. And what Langley highlight would be complete without a 1-yard touchdown run by Austin Pritchett? This one is not that case either. 16-14 after the failed pat. But Southlake's coming back with a 7-yard run by Jawan Jones, makes it 21-17. But Paul, do you like fish sticks? Something smells fishy about this fake punt, and it is a fake punt. Michael Bissonnette, snap goes to him. Late in the fourth quarter, Southlake's up 3. They go for the fake. Langley gets the ball at the Southlake's 20 and making them pay 3 plays later. Now, Braden Anderson just 3 of 11 passing in the fourth quarter, but he's saying, take that, stat monkey. Now here, 3rd and goal. Southlake's trying to come back to tie. Stephon Sanford gets a pass, tackled at the 3 yards on 4th and goal. They're down 3. They go for the touchdown and the win, but Jawan Jones is stuffed. Langley, goal line stand. That deserves a sports guy chest bump. They take it by 3.
Langley Saxon's showing off some of their skill talent. Marcus Harvey getting it done there. But,
and he's a sophomore.
Yeah, exactly. I talked with Coach before the season. He said he has the most impressive young, untrained talent in the defensive back, in the offensive backfield. So Langley continue to moving up. Big win over South Lakes. Before we jump into something else, I want to talk about Fairfax for a second because they are 5-4 right now and deserve to get some credit. I talked with head coach Chris Haddock this week to do a story on Fairfax, who has not been above 500 since 1999, the year Coach Verbanek left. We already gave Verbanek love with Westfield. They have not been above 500 since. They've been 500 twice. Mm-hmm. They're at least 500 now at 5-4. They also have Thomas Jefferson next week, unbeaten, winless Thomas Jefferson. There we go. So a very possible win puts them at 6-4, and then they need a little bit of help to get into the playoffs. Again, first time since 1999. Haddock has this team believing they can win. When he first took over, they were 2-8 in the Concord District. Last year, when their first Concord District game went 4-6. This year, possibly 6-4, a big bump up.
Yeah, I talk to coaches all the time throughout the season, see them picking up game tape for digital sports. And when I saw these coaches at week 6, I said, okay, we're 2-4, all we need to do is win out. And me, as a sports writer, you kind of, you smile and say, yeah, all I can do is win out. And you kind of roll your eyes thinking that's not possible because they have McLean, South Lakes coming up. Well, they rolled through both of them. Mm-hmm. South Lakes, they only beat by 5, but McLean, 55-17, they beat them last week. Shut out Marshall this week, and the yardage they allowed was minimal. They allowed -7 yards in the first quarter en route to a 21-0 win and had a defensive touchdown by Musa Konda. So this team, very strong defense, very well coached, and now they've got me believing too, in addition to the team. Mm-hmm. They face Jefferson this week. We can assume, very possible Jefferson can pull it. Fairfax is going to win the game. Fairfax is going to win the game. They're going to go 6-4, and all they need is either Lake Braddock to beat West Springfield or Lee to beat T.C. Williams for them to get into the playoffs. Yeah,
and again, when Haddock first took over 2 years ago, he said he didn't talk about winning. They were coming off a 1-9, a couple 1-9 seasons. He didn't talk about winning. He just said competing. Let's compete. And then last year he's like, okay, we're competing. Let's win some games. This year he said, let's get into the playoffs. 8 teams from Division 6 go in. Why not? Fairfax looking like they might get there.
And the nice thing is you see 3 team shift districts, Hayfield, Fairfax, and Woodson. All 3 are performing substantially better. So great job from the VHSL Northern Region coaches getting this right, getting more equal competition across the region.
Exactly. All right, Monica, I'm done with my piece on Fairfax. What else do you have for us?
All right, well, let's take a quick break from football and segue into some field hockey, because those of you who are field hockey fans out there probably know that the Northern Region Final was supposed to be tonight, but it got moved to tomorrow night at Oakton High School. So the benefit for us is we got Jason Mackey in the studio talking with BJ Kubarulis about some field hockey.
Hello, everybody, and welcome into the Writers Lounge. I'm BJ Kubarulis, and I'm joined in studio today with fellow Washington Post contributor Jason Mackey, who covers all of field hockey in Virginia right now. So, Jason, we had some interesting semifinals. We'll recap those in just a moment here in the Northern Region Tournament. Let's show the bracket, though, to show how these teams got to where they are, and we'll also preview the finals. Oakton, Woodson, South County, and Fairfax. Jason, let's start with that South County and Fairfax. Obviously, as you see on your screen, a victory for South County. Walk me through that one.
Absolutely. It looked like South County was cruising. 2-1, second half. They start to, time's winding down. 6.5 minutes left, though. Tiffany Balbuena from Fairfax scores and ties it up. Then all of a sudden, it's overtime. Right. You're in the region semifinals. And so they go into overtime. 12-15, just less than 3 minutes in, Erica Benzer from South County gets a penalty stroke, puts it top left, and just the place goes nuts. I mean, they got the matchup they wanted with that, which the other semifinal, which we can get into.
Yeah, Oakton, Woodson, that one was also probably a good one as well. Two perennial powers within the Northern Region field hockey scene. Walk me through that semifinal.
It was kind of wacky because it was scoreless until late in the second half, and you started thinking, can Oakton get a goal here, and can this happen? But Shelly Montgomery ended up, it was off of a penalty corner, and she just sees the ball at her feet and takes a shot at it, goes in, 1-0 win for Woodson. And right after that, everybody is, we want South County back. We want South County back. There's definitely some backstory there with them in South County.
Right, a rematch of what I believe was the Patriot District Final, and that one I think went down to the wire. Let's jump back into that bracket just a moment to show you how these teams got to this final. You can see Woodson cruising through some pretty tough ones, Westfield and then Oakton. Those could have been region finals at any point. But Woodson, South County, so it's an all-Patriot District Championship on Thursday, November 5th at 7 p.m. at Oakton High School. Jason, why don't you give me a little preview into the Northern Region Field Hockey Championship?
Okay. Well, I mean, you said it. It's the Patriot District. At the beginning of the season, everybody thought the Patriot District is going to be the strongest district. Well, they have the two teams there. This is basically round 3, what you need to know. Mid-season, they met, Woodson won. I think it was 1-0 was the score, and then in the Patriot District Final as well, 2-0 South County got the win. So this is round 3. You have two of the best teams out there, sort of opposing styles, and they're going to go out.
You talk about their styles. Let's scout each of these teams. Let's start with the Stallions of South County. Jason, walk me through the basics for these teams.
Okay, the basics, right below that line, Megan Weirs, know that name. Because she is the offense. She's not all of their offense, but she is a very, very potent scorer. On any penalty corner, they're going to try to get her the ball. That's what they want to do. That's their game plan. Leah Conti has really turned that program around, 62, 34, and 3 since 2005 there. Great defender. Caitlin Coast does a lot of things on the back line, and they've won the Patriot District, as we talked about the past 2 years.
Right, two-time defending Patriot District champs. The Stallions now go in to look for a region championship. Now you talk about region championships and you got to mention Woodson's, the Oaktons. Those are the programs that have been there. Let's talk about Woodson. They have been there, and here are the basics. Jason, that bottom line there, Cavs have won 4 region titles this decade. That's really the one that sticks out.
Absolutely, and they last won it in 2007 under Becky Preston, her second year there. Leading scorer, a lot is made about Shelly Montgomery, but the leading scorer is Eliana Brown. She had 2 goals in the quarterfinal win. She has 20 on the season. Really, she just parks herself right in front of the net and really has a nose for the ball and can find it and put it in. Becky's 57-10 in her 3 years there, and the player to watch out for, she really makes everything go. The glue to this team is Shelly Montgomery.
All right, 30 seconds, Jason. Tell me who wins the Northern Region Championship.
I'm going to have to say Woodson. I know I'm going to take some flack for it, but I mean, beginning of the season, we do the preview emails like you know about, and you kind of take the pulse of everything. Everybody said Woodson. I think here we are. I think that they get their 5th title.
Woodson looking for its 5th title in Northern Region field hockey this decade. Want to thank Jason Mackey from the Washington Post for joining me here in studio in the Writers Lounge. I'm BJ Kubarulis. Until next week, thanks for joining me here on the Fairfax Sports Report. Back to you, Monica.
All right, we will have more field hockey for you next week. We'll be talking about what happens in that Northern Region Final, which once again is tomorrow night at Oakton High School. Well, one district left to talk about for football, so let's show you the national district standings after Week 9. Hayfield and Edison both coming up with wins this week, setting up a really good showdown this week when they square off against each other. But let's talk first about Hayfield's big win this past week, because they took on a Falls Church team that is defeated Edison and won 34-13. Anton McCallum and Rayshawn Riggins, again, having very big nights. Those two players, we've talked about them all year long. They've had phenomenal seasons. Marcus Hughes, we've talked about a lot too. 88 rushing yards, that's a very good statistic, but guys, we've seen the numbers he's put up, and so you have to say some very good things about the Hayfield defense.
Most definitely, Phil. Hayfield doing a good job. You know, the offense, we know what their offense can do, but their defense, yeah, doing a good job.
Defensive line play. I mean, Coach Parker, when I saw him this Saturday morning to pick up the tape from this game, that's the first thing he said. He said, man, their defensive line was playing great. And we talk about the running backs all day, deservedly so. Anton McCollum, Rayshawn Riggins, and sophomore Steve Lynch, extremely talented. But with Coach Hill now, Coach Hill coaching, he's a wrestling coach, kind of like Dick Adams, also a wrestling coach and football coach. Those guys know how to coach lines, and I mean this showed through week 1. Marcus Hughes goes from 300 yards against Mount Vernon to 88 against Hayfield on 22 carries. And we have a highlight package for this game as well. We'll jump into that. First quarter from this game, Hayfield takes an immediate lead with the ball at the 46-yard line. Anton McCollum takes a snap out of the eye, rolls with play action, and who's he dialing up? IDK, his BFF, Sean Townsend. 46-yard touchdown connection for McCollum. Remember, this kid threw for 270 yards against a very talented Lee secondary. So you figure, I mean, he can throw the ball too, and that's just not fair. But this is the kind of day it was, Paul, for Hayfield. McCollum keeps it on the triple option, calls his own number. You know what happens, you get busy, but gets stripped from Matt Wren, and ball just sitting there. Nazrulism on the day, 0 carries, 7 yards. You just saw them. Then next play, it was just that kind of night for Hayfield, already up 14-0. I neglected to mention one Rayshon Riggins touchdown. We will not neglect to show or mention another 3-yard touchdown run for Riggins. Your score at recess, 21-0 Hawks. Now a 21-yard punt return by Elbert Maxwell set up this. Anton McCollum keeps it on the zone read, goes right through untouched. 97 yards on 13 carries and a touchdown last week. 13 carries, same as this week, 205 yards more and 5 touchdowns. But hey, Falls Church coming back. AJ Cashiap going upstairs to Sammy Youssef, gone. 54 yards. That made the score 28-6 after a failed PAT. And then Falls Church striking again. On the day, AJ Cashiap, 12 of 18 passing, $135, 2 touchdowns, 1 pickle-ickle. This was not it. 17-yard score. Suddenly with the game, it's 28-13. But Rayshon, look how Rayshon is living. 3rd rushing touchdown. He finished 14 carries, 65 yards, 3 score. Coach Hill, all wet. Scoreboard shows what we already suspected. Hayfield takes it by 21. Paul, this game, Hayfield still unbeaten in the National District. So still 2 teams in the entire region with unbeaten district records, Westfield and Hayfield. Next week, Hayfield takes on Edison for what will be, for all intents and purposes, a district title.
And that Edison team beats Stuart 29-20. Edison Angus Harper, 129 yards, 3 touchdowns. Jason Friday for Stuart, 249 passing yards, but 2 interceptions. Had a rushing touchdown. Levi Barber, 76 passing yards, TD, and 65 rushing yards. Philip.
Big thing for Edison in this game. Levi Barber left with a knee injury in the 3rd quarter, and before that point, they had 8 yards per carry, 8.0 yards per carry. After that point, they only had they gained 23 total yards on 22 total plays, barely over 1 yard a carry. If he's out for an extended time, this is a lot of trouble for Edison. They're already without Chris Washington. So Harper becomes almost a one-man show. His yards per carry dropped immensely with the Edison yards per play after Barber left because they became almost one-dimensional. Curtis Thorpe played great against Wakefield. Stuart really dared him to do work, and their secondary just covered ground. So they're playing Hayfield next week. We'll see about Levi's status in that game and then for their first-round playoff game.
One thing, again, in the National District I wanted to mention is Wakefield and Mount Vernon. They play each other next week. A huge game. We don't make fun of teams that lose, 0-9 undefeated, because we know how hard football is. We know how much effort these kids put in, and it's not. I don't think any team should go without a season without getting one victory, and it's a horrible feeling. So this Wakefield, Mount Vernon, both 0-9. This could be the biggest game on the slate in Week 10.
It will be. And when you saw their schedule as of a couple weeks ago, you kind of thought these teams might be going into this game 0-9. And again, we don't root for that. Their coaches have been more than supportive of us. The players love what we do. And we really want to reach out to those teams that don't get the massive media coverage every week, that they're not a Concord District team. They're not one of the top-tier Patriot teams. These teams kind of fall under the radar, but these kids are working just as hard as all those other kids. And you see, Wakefield last week against Yorktown, they were only down 6 at the start of the 4th quarter, and then Yorktown gets 3 4th-quarter turnovers, puts the game away. Mount Vernon this week gives up 21 in the 1st quarter to Yorktown. They outscore them the rest of the way 3-0, held them scoreless after the 1st quarter. So these teams have talent. They're more than deserving of a victory. And it's just a shame that one of them is going to have to go 0-10 and really start next year. But you look what McLean did this year. Again, they go from 0-10, 5-5. They even actually at one point were 5-2. So guys, hang in there, turn it around. And I mean, we're cheering for both of you. So we'll see what happens.
Look what Lake Braddock and Chantilly did a couple of years ago. Now they're 2 powers in the northern region. So best of luck to Wakefield and Mount Vernon. Someone's going to pick up a win this Friday night. Monica told you guys that we're talking about every single sport in the northern region in the fall. Cross country's next.
Well, that's right. Before we reveal our top 10 of the week, definitely want to talk a little bit about cross country because they too had their district meets and definitely want to talk about the big winners from that. So first of all, let's talk a little bit about the boys. And you see Oakton coming up there, the Concord District champions. Now, a lot of people were not sure whether Oakton would be able to pull it off this year. Of course, Oakton has been a powerhouse for quite some time in the Concord District, but they got the big win there. 4 of their runners finished in the top 10, and when you have a statistic like that, you probably are going to end up the winner. And so Oakton definitely coming on just as strong as they have in past seasons. And then in the Liberty, again, perennial powerhouse Jefferson there, coming up with the Liberty District title. For Lake Braddock, people talk a lot about the Lake Braddock girls, the Lake Braddock boys there coming up with the big victory, and then Edison. Last year, of course, Edison having such a great year. This year, again, Edison's cross-country team coming up big. But let's talk a little bit about the individual winners for the boys, because first of all, Andrew McCullen for Oakton coming up with the championship. Andrew McCullen has had such a great career over at Oakton, really has been their top runner this year, having a great season. And then in the Liberty District, Kevin Dowd, actually not sure about that for Fairfax, but anyway, we'll keep going over to the Patriot District with Nathaniel Meseret for Lee High School. I talked about him at the beginning of the season because everyone was really excited about him. People have been talking about him for quite some time. He came up as the Patriot District champion. And then in the National District, John Bozek for Hayfield. Haven't talked about him this season yet, but the National District champion. And again, Hayfield moving over to the National District, seeing all the success their teams have having, their volleyball program also having a very, very good year. So that's what happened with the boys. Now let's talk a little bit about the girls because there was something very special that happened. We'll get to that in just a second. But Robinson winning the Concord District. Now Robinson, people talk a lot about indoor track, outdoor track. Robinson's cross-country team winning the district championship for the girls. And then again, Jefferson, perennial powerhouse Jefferson coming up strong in the Liberty. But let's talk a little bit about the Patriot District because West Springfield, who's led by 3 phenomenal seniors, coming up with the Patriot District Championship. This is their first title in 29 years. In fact, in the past 8 years, they haven't won an invitational or a championship. They come up strong with the Patriot District Championship. They're led by Paige Kvartunas. She's been their leader all year, along with Alex Watt and Anna Barber, 3 amazing seniors. So definitely want to congratulate West Springfield. And then Edison winning the National District. And let's show you, I've already spoiled who the individual winner was for the girls in the Patriot District. But first of all, Lainey Smith there from Oakton is your Concord District champion. And then Stephanie Marzin, probably not a lot of people surprised by that. She's been strong all season long. And again, the Jefferson team just year after year, so impressive. Paige Kvartunas for West Springfield getting the individual championship. And then Maya Hicks, I've talked about her quite a bit on the program, but this is a young lady I am very excited to see what she does in regionals because I think she's such a talent. I talk about her during indoor track, outdoor track, but Maya Hicks was one of my players or runners to watch at the beginning of the season, and she is your National District champion. Well, again, we'll continue our coverage of cross country, talk to you about what happens in the Northern Region Championships. But now let's go ahead and unveil for you our top 10 list for football. We already told you, and there was perhaps no surprise, that WT Woodson was going to be at the top of the pack. But this week, you should notice that they got all 40 points that you can get from us. And so every single person ranked them as the #1 team. They've definitely earned that respect. And then Robinson also getting quite a bit of respect, certainly after their big win against Oakton. Everyone's seeing that running game. Not a lot of movement, #3 position, but then Stonebridge moving up, Westfield moving up 1 position. You see a new addition to our list for this week is Hayfield, and then glad to see Chantilly in there as well because, guys, I've been really impressed with them, and certainly they've played some difficult teams, but happy to see them as the #10 team in the list. So we always do our top 10 for you, but guys, we also have the top 5 plays of the week.
Yep, top 5 plays of the week. You go around the region, see all 15 games, every snap of those games. Paul, we've seen the top 10 teams. Now it's time to give some individual love. Top 5 plays of the week. Kick things off here at number 5. We already talked about Angus Harper. Now his first 11 carries, 99 yards, 3 touchdowns. His last 10, just 10 yards. That's after Levi Barber got hurt. But this one, Angus, stop. 21-yard touchdown run. This was his second. Edison up 27-7. At this point, they go on to win 29-20. Now number 4, opening kickoff. Things don't get any earlier. Yorktown's last play of the last game was an interception return for touchdown, was the number 1 play. This is a great highlight play, big play to highlight ratio. CJ Bartholomew takes it 91 yards back to the house. He's off like a bull with gas. Yorktown 21-point first quarter. They go on to win 21-3. But we got a duo of plays. Jim's going to be very angry with me for putting 2 plays in here for 1 spot. But Carl Lindemann juggles it to himself. 9-yard touchdown reception. And Lindemann not done because he's the bomb. Like kick. Richard Lewis found him for 3 times for touchdowns on this day. 5 catches, 80 yards. 2 were just sick. Makes him number 3 in the countdown. Now, number 2, Khalil White, left defensive end, intercepts the pass. Beautiful. And then the athleticism to go back. He's got to bounce. 47-yard interception return for a score. But Lake Braddock scored the final 49 points. Game over. And number 1, Ben Powers. I'd say the number 3 name in the region. Look at him. Just run through the entire defense, dragging tacklers. I put number 3 name. Number 1, Rock Battle from Washington Lee. Number 2, Arthur. His name's probably Kaplow. I'm going to call him Arthur Kaplow because he's a linebacker from Marshall. This one's out to Art. I've been waiting to use his name all year. We don't get many Marshall highlights. So Arthur, this one's to you. To Arthur. To Paul. To Monica.
All right, Phil, thanks for your top 5. Let's go to the pick 'em real quick. Let's go what we had in week 9. Everybody picking the exact same teams except for Mr. Paul Frummel picking Lee over West Springfield. And because of that pick, go into sole possession of number 1 ahead of BJ, Monica, and Phil
Now,
are tied at 23.
Suspicion, you weren't here next week, so I'm thinking maybe you did something to West Springfield's bus, maybe? Rigged something. You weren't at the show, and you're only one that picked Lee, so I'm going to go and chalk that one up to shady business. I'm calling shenanigans. But let's take a look at the picks we have coming up for this coming week in week 10. You look across the board, unanimous for Chantilly against Oakton. That's a big game in Division 6 playoff picture. Unanimity for South Lake Stonebridge, big game for Liberty District. We are split on Edison Hayfield. I'm the only one that went with Langley, and 3 of the 4 of us pick Lee against TC Williams. BJ going with the upset.
Okay, I'll start with Edison Hayfield. Huge game. I'm just going with the favorites. I'm just going with, it depends on if Levi Barber in or out, but yeah. I like Edison over Hayfield. Edison's been there before. They play in huge games every year. This one's no different.
2 things I'm going to mention quickly. Hayfield against Edison. In this game, Levi Barber probably will not play from what I'm hearing, and Chris Washington definitely out. So he took away 2 of the big 3 horses. Hayfield defensive line play, been outstanding. And Langley, I just like how they've been playing lately. They're red hot. They've won 4 of their last 6. Beat some pretty impressive teams in there and took Fairfax to overtime. Look at common opponents. They play favorably against McLean. Again, only lost to Stonebridge by 3. McLean lost to them by 17. They only lost to Fairfax by 7 in overtime. And McLean lost to Fairfax by 38.
That's true, but Riley Byer is back, healthy, feeling good. Monica, anything that jumps out to you?
Well, I will say that I agonized over the McLean-Langley game, and really just kind of when it finally came down to it, I did go with Riley Biro. I've been so impressed with him all season long, but Phil, I completely agree with what you said earlier in the program. I think that, Langley's a really good team that perhaps hasn't gotten the respect that they've been due, and they've been showing over the past few weeks how strong they are. So I think that's going to be a really good one. And then I'm so excited about the Chantilly-Oakton game. We all picked Chantilly, that's true, and certainly lots of reasons why, and 2 big ones are Mike Ferris and Chris Martin. But Oakton, they're such a good team. Jimmy Boone is a great quarterback. I think he's having a good year. I think he's going to have a great year next year. So guys, certainly that game, I think it's going to be a close one.
Well, Monica and I just saw Oakton last week against Robinson, and it is Robinson, but they just got creamed by Robinson. And what's Robinson do? They're great runners. But Presti can get the ball out and find his open receiver, or his one open receiver that he likes to look at. But what is Chantilly's strength? They can run the ball. Carson Romines a great quarterback. That's what I'm thinking right there.
But Oakton does have a recent history of success against Chantilly. But again, I did go with Chantilly in this game. Jimmy Boone, very all-American numbers for Jimmy Boone. 9 of 15 passing, exactly 100 yards. 10 carries, exactly 100 yards. Very symmetrical, very all-American. We love it here. But something else I want to touch on. the Langley pick against McLean. I picked McLean preseason to go 5-5. Also, if they lose this game, which I picked, they'll go 5-5. So I just wanted to throw that out there. But yeah, a lot of big games this week. We have the Division 5, Division 6 playoff pictures coming up, and all these games are very pivotal for the Division 5 and Division 6 playoff pictures. We take a look at those PowerPoints now from Division 5 in the playoffs for the upcoming postseason. These games, huge implications. Edison at the 3, Hayfield at the 4 coming in. They play each other this week. Tied at 6, South Lakes and Yorktown, but South Lakes plays at Stonebridge. But the interesting game, you look at Yorktown tied for 6 and Washington Lee at 9. They play each other. That's virtually a play-in game. It's going to take a lot for Washington Lee to lose and still get in. They're going to have McLean lose and basically all their out-of-conference teams win. Maybe not even mathematically possible. But Washington Lee, though, has not beaten Yorktown since 1980. Current head coach Josh Shapiro was 10 years old.
I love seeing Robert E. Lee. I love seeing Hayfield in that top 5 because we're so used to seeing Stonebridge, Edison, Stonebridge, Edison. Lee and Hayfield, two of the better teams, might be better than Stonebridge and Edison this year. So I like seeing that. McLean, they win, they're in, playing their district rival Langley, the Rotary Cup. Huge game for McLean there. So interesting stuff going on in Division 5. Gets even more interesting when you head into Division 6. Woodson, far and away, number 1 in the PowerPoint ratings, but Robinson's right there, Lake Braddock, the usual suspects. You see Westfield number 5, Chantilly, Fairfax at number 7. They still need to beat Thomas Jefferson, and as we mentioned, a few other things happening. T.C. Williams, they're hanging on number 8.
Yeah, and they actually not pictured Oakton at number 10, still mathematically alive. They would need a win over Chantilly and some help, especially at a conference game, teams like Annandale winning. But look at the top 2, Woodson, Robinson, pretty firm grasp there, but Blake Braddock is playing awesome football. They blew out West Potomac this week 49-6, beat Annandale last week 48-3. This defense is playing outstanding. Held 8 of their 9 opponents to their season low in rushing up to the point of that game. Now Fairfax we see at number 7. They're come in with a win over Jefferson, would be 6-4. To not make the playoffs, they need T.C. Williams to beat Lee on the weekend. They need Oakton to beat Chantilly, and they need West Springfield to beat Lake Braddock, if I remember correctly. So 3 things can happen for Fairfax not to get in, but for all intents and purposes, one of those teams, one of those underdogs will fall to the favorite. Fairfax pretty safe at 7. And it's pretty interesting because they've played number 1 Woodson, number 2 Robinson, played them both fairly close. And then we look Westfield number 5 in the rankings. This team, remember, started the season 1-4. If they beat their last opponent, Herndon, who was the only district loss last year other than Oakton. Herndon snapped that long winning streak for them. And South County loses to Woodson, which is possible. Westfield could have a home game after starting 1-4.
All right, just real quick, Phil, I want to go who's your Division 5, Division 6 champion? Division
5 champion, Idris Augustus healthy. I like Lee over Stonebridge. First time in 5 years, Stonebridge and Edison did not meet in the final. Division 6, I'm going Lake Braddock. They're playing the best football right now.
Phil, that's exactly what I had. I like Lee, I like Lake Braddock. Monica, who do you have?
I like Lee, I like Woodson. We'll see what happens. Want to preview our Verizon Fios Game of the Week, which is going to be Falls Church and Stuart. That's where we'll be this coming Friday, but you're going to want to be here next week for us to tell you everything that happened in Week 10 because it's one of the most exciting weeks in high school football. Before we go, once again, want to thank the folks that make our program possible, our good friends at CCI Screen Printing for all your screen printing needs, and Craig Sturbutzel for those fantastic photos you see every single week. Don't forget you can get copies of this program at www.pressboxvideo.com, and you can check out our website for our Video Vault feature. Become fans of the Fairfax Sports Network on our Facebook page and send us any story ideas you have. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you again next week.